Hello there. I had someone ask me about my feelings about animal testing and because of the fact that I'm a vegan, and you would think that vegans would all agree on this subject, but I'm finding that we don't agree, and it's a much more difficult subject than you would think. I'm going to talk about animal enslavement and animal testing, and we'll start with the animal enslavement part. What kind of also brought this on, I was talking with a priest of all things, but we were more so into talking ethics and just discussing ideas that when he came to the part where he said, you know, sometimes there are just no answers. He wasn't talking from the religious standpoint of, we don't know enough, you know, we don't have the answers, only God knows. He was really saying sometimes there just aren't the answers. And what I really think is that sometimes we just don't know how we would respond to something unless we were actually in the situation. There's so many little variations on how you might respond, and yeah, that's why sometimes we just don't know. I'll give you examples of that in a little while. But as far as animal enslavement, and I'm not going to get into the food thing so much, but I had a friend who said that we would not be as far as we are these days. We would not have progressed so far unless we had enslaved animals. And, you know, he was talking about like oxen, how we had them plowing, and horses, we put the, you know, the bridles and the reins and all the gear on them to help us. And, you know, we might not even have the varieties of clothing, though I don't wear wool unless it's handed down or something, you know. I don't ever purchase anything like that. But we wouldn't be as far. And of course, I like comfort. I like technology. One thing is, we might have found a different way. If we did not allow enslavement of animals, we might have found another way. You know, we're ingenious people. We might have come up with something different. And that's something I always think about. Now, I used to, just to give you an example of how my thinking has changed, I used to work at riding at a camp, you know, and I loved horses. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world to ride horses, and I taught other people how to ride horses. But I did notice the bits in their mouths, and you know, they looked very uncomfortable, and when they took a drink, it was so hard for them to get a drink, and yet those bits were in almost all day long. And what I didn't know is that those bits are actually painful. They're scraping, it's metal, scraping against their teeth. You know, there's the front teeth and they've got sets back here, and it's hitting both. And then this part of the bridle is pushing on them, so it's really painful for them. And they're wearing the saddles all day long. I mean, that's right. You have to sometimes substitute a human to see what you're actually doing to an animal. Some of them just say, well, why don't we change some laws to make, you know, things more humane? And it's so very, very frustrating because quite often we'll fight and fight and fight just to get an extra foot in a pig's little space. Or we did get rid of puppy farms, I believe, in Missouri, and like within a couple months they reversed the decision and brought them right. So really the legislation thing is a difficult way to go if we want to really make some progress. But, you know, we'll still try it. As far as animal testing, we have made some improvements in animal testing as far as people are more aware, so we're trying to cut down a little bit. We've got human simulators, we've got computer simulators. Some animal rights groups say that there's no reason for us to even need to animal test anymore, because sometimes, you know, you test on an animal and then you find out that the results do not apply to a human anyway. They just don't always transfer. But they're still testing a whole lot, and I think some of it is because it's so easy to say, hey, bring 50 mice from that cage over to here and let's test them. And I think we use it a little too much. You know, at some point, if you're feeding 100 Cokes to a rat and it gets fat or gets diabetes, and you know, you do that to like 10 rats, I don't think you really need to repeat the studies and repeat the studies and then repeat the studies in warm weather, in cold weather. It's like every single little possible thing, you know, I'm kind of making up stuff here, but now here's a really tough part. Right now they're looking into genetically engineering pigs so that humans don't reject their organs. So they can just breed pigs, and they would take out the beating heart, it's got to still be beating, and put it into a human. Now, one thing, we need more human donors. When you die, you know, you should be signing that donor registration card before you die. And so that we don't have to use animals, and we should never use animals anyway. I mean, at some point you have to look at it and go, my gosh, how crazy are we that we're taking animals out of their own situations, and we're just raising them so that we can use their organs in our bodies. It's insane at some point. Sometimes we don't realize, we get used to ourselves, and we don't realize how crazy we really are. We did try this one time, by the way. We tried it with a baboon with baby Faye. I don't know if you remember this, and it did not work, because within 15 minutes, baby Faye rejected the baboon's heart, and baby Faye died. And of course the baboon died. I saw a picture, and I don't know if it was real or if it was an imitation of the baboon. And you know how those poor monkeys, every time they're in a test, they seem like they've got them like strapped in, and this baboon was strapped in again. And there was a picture, and it had his tongue sticking out and his eyes closed, and there was a surgeon right next to him with tongs, and he had the heart, and they said it was still beating, of course, in his tongs to give to baby Faye. And it was just horrid. It was horrid to see that he'd just taken that heart out of that baboon, still beating, and just awful. And I thought, no, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. We should never be doing this. But then, what if it were my kid that needed a heart? I understand the mom. You've got a very short decision time to make a decision. My kid dies, or I take a heart from an animal and put it in and give it a try. We've got two morals going here. We've got animal rights issues. We've got mama's protective. Mama has to protect her babies, even if her babies are, 22 or, you got to protect your babies. And so, it's a real hard decision to make, and honestly, I don't know what the real decision would be unless I was in the situation. I think that I, of course, would always try to go with my kids, and again, that makes me a hypocritical vegan in some ways, but in some ways not, because there are vegans who are like world-renowned as moralist vegans who will say, animal testing, if it were to solve Parkinson's, would be all right, because it would help so many humans, and they can do so much more good in the world. And they actually believe that. And see, I don't. I'm like, no, we should find another way. We've got to stop this, and we've got to find other ways to do things without animal testing. This is wrong. The only time it's right is for my kids, their health. But do you see a problem with that? You probably do. Every single person has a mom, which means that there would always be an excuse to use an animal. So we have a real problem here. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because it is harder than you think again. As much as I want to save every single animal, and I don't like the idea of animal testing and animal organs and all of that. What do you do? What do you do with some of these crazy instances? And your brain stops thinking about it at some point too, by the way. You can't really make a decision, a full decision, because your brain blocks it. It just goes, I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want to go one way or the other. I don't want to think about it. But anyway, as far as, testing chemicals and things, this is another interesting thing. A friend pointed out to me that on Facebook, there's a picture of a beagle, really cute. Beagles are always cute. Dogs are always cute. And it said underneath, beagles go blind. Did you know beagles go blind testing your shampoos? And he challenged me. He says, I searched for this, and I can't find anything about beagles going blind. Is this true? And so I looked, and actually, beagles, they use more in the nose sniffing tests. I'm going to post some pictures. In fact, I'm going to turn this off in a second and show you both rats that are done for inhaling chemicals and beagles for inhaling chemicals. I just wanted to show you some of the beagle testing. I don't know how modern some of these pictures are. I know this is an old picture. I'm pretty certain this stuff is still going on, and because some of these do look somehow modern to me. Now this one really floored me. These are rats that are inside these little things, and they've got smoke going into them for hours and hours on end. It's awful. I promised you I wouldn't show you anything bloody, at least to myself, but this is just gross, isn't it? But as far as the shampoo, I mean, I did find one or two things vaguely about beagles going blind. And the thing is, when you put up a rabbit picture, for some reason, even if it's got the gooey eyes and from the allergies and all that from the animal testing, people aren't as sympathetic as if you put up a beagle. I don't know what it is, so I think that's why they were using it. But yeah, it's horrid what they do, and I don't even want to go in, well, I will. I'll go into the details a little bit. With rabbits, you know, they will cut away their eyelids so they can't close their eyes, or tape their eyes open and put stuff in them. And you know, it's like, use baking soda to wash your hair. Go back to baking soda to clean everything. Baking soda, vinegar, hair rinse. And then if you want it to smell good, I mean, there are shampoos where animals are not tested in it, and they're vegan shampoos. But again, we have to look at these issues. Would we subject a human to these things? Would we have an organ taken out of a human just to put in another one when the human had nothing wrong with them, brought them in? Would you be, you know, because it could be you could be pulled off the street and end up in one of these, you know, in a cage for a while until it was your time to be tested or to be operated on. You know, we would not do these things. We would not do it. So why are we doing it to animals? And they do have, I have to tell you, as far as like hearts and things, they are trying to make them in labs, you know, try to make fake hearts. And I really think, honestly, that might be the way to go, since so many, especially, this is an odd thing, it seems to be a lot of religious people don't want to donate their organs. I think, you know, what, do their spirits have to have all their organs to be all organ complete, a totally complete spirit up in heaven? I don't know, I don't get it, but for some reason they don't seem to want to give up their organs. So I think the idea of making them in a lab might be the way to go. And maybe if we said, no, there's no animal testing, maybe they'd get going on that even faster. I don't know, that's always my thought, that they probably would. So I'm really not giving you any real answers today. It's a difficult subject, and it's more just giving you something to think about, what you think on the subject.